Hello, my name is Sophia. I want to tell you about my journey, how I conquered my fear of public speaking. For a long time, I was scared to speak in front of people. My heart would race, my hands would shake, and my mind would go blank. But I found a way to change that, and if I can do it, so can you. My name is Sophia, and for many years, I lived in silence. I wasn't quiet because I had nothing to say. I was quiet because I was afraid. Afraid of being wrong, of being laughed at, and of being the center of attention. Even in small classrooms where everyone knew each other, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. The fear I felt whenever I had to speak in front of others wasn't just a little worry. It was a storm that lived inside me, strong and loud. I remember my 5th grade class like it was yesterday. My classroom had bright posters on the walls, books in every corner, and small desks lined up neatly in rows. My teacher, Ms. Harris, was kind and always smiling. She wore bright colors and clapped loudly whenever someone tried hard, even if the answer was wrong. Most kids loved her class. They loved raising their hands, sharing their thoughts, and laughing with one another. But I was not like them. Every day, I would walk into that room with a knot in my stomach. I kept my eyes on my notebook, hoping the teacher wouldn't notice me. When she asked a question, I would look down or pretend I was writing. My biggest fear was that she would call my name. My heart would pound so hard I could hear it in my ears. My face would turn hot, and I would feel like I was disappearing under everyone's eyes. Once, she asked a simple question about a story we had just read. I knew the answer. I had read the chapter twice and even talked about it with my mom the night before. I could feel my hand twitching. A part of me wanted to raise it, just a little. But the fear stopped me. What if I say something silly? I thought. What if they laugh? So I stayed still. Then something terrifying happened. Ms. Harris looked right at me and smiled. Sophia, would you like to try? She asked in her soft voice. I froze. Could feel every single pair of eyes turn toward me. My mouth felt dry. My throat felt tight. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Not a single word. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. I wanted to run out of the room. My cheeks were burning, and my hands were shaking under my desk. Ms. Harris waited for a moment, then gently said, "It's okay. Maybe next time." She smiled again and moved on to another student. But I couldn't move on. That moment stayed with me for the rest of the day. I couldn't eat my lunch. I couldn't focus on anything else. That night, I cried quietly in my room. I felt like I had failed. I told myself I was weak, that I'd never be brave. I didn't want to talk to anyone about it. I didn't think they would understand. The truth is, I didn't just fear speaking. I feared judgment. I feared the sound of my own voice in a room full of people. I feared making mistakes. I believed that if I said the wrong thing, people would think I was dumb or weird. Even my friends didn't know how scared I was. They thought I was just shy. But it was more than that. It felt like something big and heavy sitting on my chest every time I had to speak out loud. Things went on like this for a long time. Every day in class was the same. I stayed quiet. I kept my thoughts inside. I watched others raise their hands and be praised for their answers. I wanted to be like them, but I didn't know how. My fear always won. I told myself I wasn't meant to be a speaker. I told myself it was just my personality. I accepted that I would always be the quiet girl in the corner. But even though I stayed quiet, the desire to speak never left me. It was always there, deep down, like a tiny light that wouldn't go out. Sometimes I would imagine myself standing, up and answering a question. I would imagine the teacher smiling and the class listening. I would even practice in my head. But when the real moment came, fear took over again. And so the light stayed small. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. After class, Ms. Harris asked me to stay behind for a minute. My heart dropped. I thought I was in trouble. I stayed in my seat while everyone else left. She came and sat next to me. She looked at me kindly and said, "Sophia, I noticed that you always pay attention and do your work quietly. That's a good thing. But I also believe you have a voice. That needs to be heard." I didn't know what to say. I looked at the floor. She continued, "I used to be shy too. I used to shake when I had to speak in front of people. But one day I told myself, it's okay to be scared. It's not okay to give up. So I started small. Just one sentence at a time. I want you to try that too. One sentence at a time. Even if your voice shakes." I nodded, but I didn't speak. Her words touched something inside me. I went home that day and sat on my bed for a long time thinking. I remembered the look in her eyes. She wasn't angry. She wasn't disappointed. She believed in me. And for the first time I thought, maybe I can try. That night I did something I had never done before. I stood in front of my mirror and looked at myself. I imagined I was in class. I whispered the answer to the question from earlier. Then I whispered it again, louder. The girl in the story went to the garden because she wanted to find the hidden key. My voice sounded strange to me. I wasn't used to hearing myself talk out loud, but I kept going. I repeated the sentence 5 times. Then I looked myself in the eyes and said, "You can do this, Sophia." I didn't really believe it yet, but I wanted to believe it. The next day in class, I felt nervous again. Ms. Harris asked another question. I knew the answer again. My heart started to race. My hands started to shake. But this time, something was different. I remembered what she said. One sentence at a time. I took a deep breath. I lifted my hand. Just a little. Not high, but high enough for her to see. But she didn't call on me. She picked someone else, and I was relieved. But also a little sad. I had tried, and no one noticed. That night, I told myself I would try again tomorrow. I stood in front of the mirror again. I practiced. My voice was still soft, still unsure, but it was a start. Day after day, I started doing this, practicing in the mirror, whispering answers to myself, pretending I was in front of the class. I even started recording my voice on my phone just to get used to it. I would listen and think, that doesn't sound too bad. I was slowly, quietly building my confidence. Then, a few days later, it happened again. Ms. Harris asked a question. My hand went up. This time, a little higher. She saw it. She smiled. "Sophia?" I froze again. But I remembered the mirror. I remembered the recordings. I remembered the promise I made to myself. One sentence at a time. The main character wanted to find the key because it opened the secret door, I said. My voice was shaky. My cheeks were hot. But I did it. Ms. Harris smiled. "That's correct, Sophia. Well done." A few kids clapped. I felt a mix of joy and fear inside me. But something changed that day. I had spoken. I had faced my fear for one small moment, and I didn't fall apart. After class, I stayed behind again. Ms. Harris came to me and said, "I'm proud of you. Keep going." I nodded, and this time I smiled. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't feel weak. I felt proud. It was just one answer, one sentence, but to me it felt like a mountain I had climbed. I realized that I didn't need to jump into big speeches right away. I could take small steps. I could grow, little by little. From that moment, I decided to keep practicing. I didn't want to stop. I wanted to feel that pride again. I wanted to get stronger. I knew I still had a long way to go. I still felt nervous. I still had fear. But now, I also had hope. After that small moment in class, something inside me changed. I was still the same girl, still shy, still scared. But now I had done something I never thought I could do. I had spoken out loud in front of others. Even if it was just one sentence, even if my voice was shaking, I did it. That one sentence gave me hope. It was like a tiny seed planted in my heart, and I knew it needed care and time to grow. But I also knew I wasn't ready to speak in class every day. My fear didn't disappear just because of one good moment. It was still there, hiding under the surface, waiting to come out every time someone looked at me or called my name. So I told myself I would practice. I would not wait for bravery to find me. I would build it slowly, with my own 2 hands. I started that very night. My room was small but cozy. There was a window that looked out to the street, a small wooden desk, a bed with a soft pink blanket, and a tall mirror standing in the corner. That mirror became my best friend. I stood in front of it and looked at myself. At first, I just looked. I didn't speak. I wasn't used to seeing myself like that, face to face, no hiding. My eyes looked nervous. My hands were cold. But I remembered Ms. Harris's words, "Even if your voice shakes." So I took a breath and said, "Hello, my name is Sophia." My voice was soft, almost like a whisper, but it was a start. Every night I added more. "Hello, my name is Sophia. I'm 10 years old. I like reading and drawing. My favorite color is blue. My favorite food is pancakes." I said these same words again and again, trying to sound more confident each time. Some nights I would speak very quietly. Other nights I tried to be louder. Sometimes I would laugh at myself when I made a mistake. At first, it felt strange, like I was pretending. But with time, it started to feel real. I used my school books to practice. I would read passages from stories out loud, looking at my reflection as if I were speaking to a classroom. The boy walked through the forest. He heard the birds singing in the trees. I would read slowly, trying to make each word clear. If I didn't know how to say a word, I looked it up on my mom's phone. I would listen to the pronunciation again and again, and then try it myself. Some words were tricky. I would say them 5 times, 10 times, until they felt comfortable on my tongue. One day, I got a small notebook and started writing short talks for myself. They weren't fancy, just little paragraphs like, "Today was a good day, I had math class, and I got the answer right." I also played with my friend Ella at recess. We laughed a lot. I would write something new each day, and then stand in front of the mirror and say it out loud. I tried to say it like I was telling a story to someone else. This helped me learn how to speak smoothly, how to connect my thoughts with words. The mirror helped me see more than just my words. I started watching my face, my hands, my eyes. I saw how my mouth moved when I said new words. I noticed when I looked too scared, and I tried to smile more. I tried standing up straight and holding my shoulders back. I imagined that I was on a stage, talking to an audience that wanted to hear me. At first, this made me laugh. Who would want to listen to me? I thought. But then I said out loud, I would. I want to listen to me. Some nights I recorded myself on my mom's phone. I was shy about it at first. I didn't like hearing my voice. It sounded different than I expected, but I kept going. I recorded my talks, then played them back. I listened for words that were too fast or too soft. Then I tried again, slower and clearer. This helped me a lot. I started to understand how I sounded to others. And slowly, I began to like my voice. It was soft but strong. It was mine. One Saturday afternoon, I was in my room practicing a short story when my mom walked in without knocking. I froze. My notebook was open, and I was in the middle of saying, "One day, the girl found a little cat in the park." I turned red and shut the notebook quickly. My mom smiled. "Were you talking to yourself?" she asked. I looked down. "Kind of," I said. She sat beside me on the bed. "Are you practicing speaking?" I nodded slowly. I thought she might laugh, but instead she said, "That's very smart. Practicing out loud is a great idea." I looked at her in surprise. "It is?" "Of course," she said. "You're building your voice, and it takes courage to do that." Her words made me feel proud. After that, I didn't hide my practicing from her. Sometimes she even listened while I read aloud. She would nod and say, "That sounded great," or "Try saying that word again a little slower." She became my biggest supporter. She even bought me a little desk lamp so I could practice better at night. That lamp, small and round, made my room feel like a stage. Soon, practicing became a daily habit, just like brushing my teeth or doing homework. I looked forward to it. Even on tired days, I would stand in front of the mirror and say something, anything, just to keep going. I talked about my day, my dreams, what I ate for lunch. I practiced introducing myself in different ways. "Hi, I'm Sophia." "Hello, it's nice to meet you." "Hey, I'm in 5th grade, and I love art." I also began to pretend I was in different situations. I would imagine someone asking me, "What's your favorite book?" And I would answer, "I like books about animals. My favorite is one about a lost puppy who finds his way home." Or I would imagine someone saying, "Tell me about your school." And I would reply, "My school is fun. We have art class on Wednesdays and library time on Fridays." The more I practiced, the more natural it felt. Words that once seemed hard now came easier. I didn't have to think so much. My tongue moved more freely. My sentences were smoother. I was still nervous in front of people, but alone in my room, I was strong. I could be myself without fear. I was learning not just how to speak, but how to believe in my voice. One night, something special happened. I was pretending to give a speech for a school assembly. I said, "Good morning, everyone. My name is Sophia, and today I want to talk about courage." I had no real assembly to speak at, but I kept going. Courage is not about never being scared. It's about trying, even when you are scared. I used to be afraid to speak, but I learned that with small steps, we can all become brave. As I said those words, I felt tears in my eyes. Not because I was sad, but because I realized something. I was changing. Slowly, gently, but clearly. I was becoming the girl I always wanted to be, someone who could speak, someone who could be heard. I still had hard days. Sometimes I still froze in class. Sometimes my voice still shook. But I always remembered my room, my mirror, my practice. I remembered that I had built something strong, one small step at a time. Then, one day at school, we were told that everyone in class would have to give a short talk in front of the class about a topic they liked. I felt a wave of fear. My hands went cold again. My stomach twisted. I can't do this, I thought. But then another thought came. Yes, you can. You've done it every night. You've been ready. I went home that night and wrote my talk. It was about my favorite animal, the dolphin. I practiced in front of the mirror just like always. Hello, my name is Sophia. Today I want to tell you about dolphins. They are smart and friendly and can jump very high. I practiced until I could say it without looking at the paper. I even smiled at myself in the mirror. The next day, when it was my turn, I walked to the front of the class. My legs were shaking, but I stood tall. I looked at my classmates. My hands were sweaty, but I held my paper steady. I took a deep breath and began. Hello, my name is Sophia. Today I want to tell you about dolphins. My voice was quiet at first, but it grew stronger with each word. I could see Ms. Harris smiling. I could see my classmates listening. I finished my talk and walked back to my seat. The room clapped. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. That night, back in my room, I stood in front of the mirror once more. I looked at myself and whispered, "You did it." And for the first time, I truly believed it. After my classroom presentation about dolphins, something began to feel different inside me. I won't say the fear disappeared. No, the fear still came like a cold wind I had to walk through, but I had learned how to keep walking anyway. I had discovered my voice, quiet but strong, and I was learning to trust it. Still, even though I had spoken in front of my class, I had never really spoken in front of my family. Not like that. At home, I was still the quiet girl. I talked, when I needed to, of course, about homework, dinner, or chores, but I didn't tell stories or give speeches. I didn't stand up in the living room and share my thoughts out loud. My parents loved me. I knew that. But speaking in front of them felt almost harder than speaking at school. What if they laughed? What if they didn't take me seriously? But part of me also knew if I could talk to my family, even just a little, it would be a big step forward. One evening after dinner, I sat in my room and thought about this. My mom was in the kitchen washing dishes, and my dad was watching the news. My little brother Noah was playing with his toy cars on the floor. It was just a normal night. But inside me, something was not normal. Inside, I felt a little fire. I wanted to try. I wanted to speak. So I picked up my notebook, the same notebook I used for practicing, and I read over one of the short talks. I had written, it was about my favorite season, spring. Spring is the best season. The flowers bloom, and the air feels warm. I like to walk outside and see the trees turning green again. I read it out loud once in my room. Then again, just to be sure. My voice was steady. My words were clear. My heart was beating fast, but I kept going. I looked at the clock. 7:42 p.m. I stood up, took my notebook and walked slowly to the living room. My dad looked up from the TV. "Hey, Sophia," he said. "Everything okay?" I nodded, holding the notebook to my chest. I want to show you something." My mom came out of the kitchen and wiped her hands on a towel. "What is it, sweetie?" I looked down for a moment. "I've been practicing speaking, and I wrote a little talk. I was wondering if I could read it to you." They both smiled, surprised but curious. My dad turned down the volume on the TV. "Of course," he said. "We'd love to hear it." My mom sat beside my dad. Noah rolled over on the carpet, hugging his car. I took a deep breath and opened my notebook. "Hi," I began. "My name is Sophia. Today, I want to tell you about spring." At first, I felt stiff. My hands were shaking, a little, and I didn't look up much from the paper. But then I remembered my mirror, my practice, my own voice. I slowed down. I tried to breathe. I let the words carry me forward. I like spring because it feels like a new beginning. The trees have blossoms. The sky is bright blue. It makes me feel happy and calm. It's also fun to play outside with my brother. I looked up at Noah, and he giggled. When I finished, there was silence for a second. Then my mom clapped softly, and my dad smiled wide. "That was beautiful, Sophia," Mom said. "Really? I didn't know you were working on this." "I've been practicing in my room," I said. Dad nodded. "I'm proud of you. That took courage." I sat down on the couch, heart still racing but full of warmth. "It felt scary," I admitted. Mom put her arm around me. "Scary things help us grow." Noah came up and gave me one of his toy cars. "You talk nice," he said. I laughed. That was the moment I realized something very important. Talking in front of others isn't just about getting the words right. It's about being seen. It's about letting people in. That night, I felt stronger than I had in a long time. But I also knew this was just the beginning. The next day, I decided to make a new goal. I would speak in front of my family once a week. Just a short talk, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. It didn't have to be perfect. I just had to do it. The first few times, I still felt nervous. My mom would sit on the couch, my dad in his chair, and sometimes Noah would climb onto my lap before I finished. But they always listened. They always smiled. My dad even started recording some of my talks with his phone. "You'll want to see this when you're older," he said. Each week, I chose a new topic. One week, I talked about my favorite book, another about why I love pancakes, and once I gave a short talk about a dream I had where I could fly. My family laughed, clapped, and asked questions. They made me feel like my words mattered. One evening, I surprised them with something different. "I want to do a pretend news report," I said, walking into the living room with a pretend microphone, made from a paper towel roll. "Good evening," I said in a deep, serious voice. "This is Sophia coming to you live from the kitchen, where Mom has just made the best spaghetti ever." They burst out laughing. Noah shouted, "Spaghetti news!" It became a fun game. Every Friday night, we called it Family Friday Talks. Sometimes I spoke seriously. Sometimes I made them laugh. Sometimes my mom joined in and told stories from her childhood. It wasn't just practice anymore. It was joy. But one evening, something very special happened. It was my grandma's birthday, and we were having a small party at our house. Grandma was sitting in the big chair near the window, wearing a pink sweater and holding a cup of tea. My cousins were there too. Everyone was talking and laughing, and I was sitting in the corner, wondering something quietly. Should I try to speak? Should I say something in front of everyone? I looked at my mom and whispered, "Should I do a talk for Grandma?" Her eyes lit up. That would be wonderful. I took a few minutes to myself in my room. I opened my notebook and flipped through the pages. Then I found the talk I had written about family. I added a few lines about Grandma and her kindness. Then I took a deep breath and went back to the party. I stood up and cleared my throat. "Excuse me," I said. Everyone turned to look at me. "I wrote a little something for Grandma," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "Can I read it?" There was silence. Then Grandma smiled and nodded. "Of course, dear." I looked down at my paper, then up at all the faces watching me. "Family is like a warm blanket," I began. "It keeps us safe and loved, even when the world feels cold. My grandma is part of that warm blanket. She always smiles at me. She gives the best hugs. She listens. And she makes my favorite cookies. I love her so much." I finished and looked up. My grandma had tears in her eyes. My mom put her hand over her heart. My dad smiled proudly. My cousins clapped. And just like that, I knew something beautiful. Speaking out loud can touch people. Speaking can make someone feel special. My words could do that. That night, Grandma hugged me tight. "You have a gift, Sophia," she said. "Keep speaking. Never stop." And I promised her that I wouldn't. After the night of my grandma's birthday, something changed deep inside me. I had done something that once felt impossible. I spoke in front of my whole family. I had made people laugh, and I had made my grandma cry happy tears. The quiet girl they once knew was now standing in the middle of the living room, sharing her words with confidence. And not just once. Week after week, I kept practicing with my family. I was no longer scared of their eyes watching me. I was learning how to speak from the heart. Still, one question kept coming to my mind. What if I tried speaking in front of more people at school? What if I could be brave outside my home too? One day, our teacher, Mr. Clark, made an announcement that made my heart skip a beat. "Students," he said as he handed out flyers, "we're starting a new speaking club at school. It will meet every Thursday after class. We'll practice speeches, storytelling, and simple talks in front of others. Anyone can join." He walked by my desk and placed a flyer in front of me. The words on the page were bold and exciting. "Find your voice! Join the speaking club!" I stared at it. My fingers held the paper tightly. My heart beat faster. This was my chance. But then a second thought came in. What if I mess up in front of the other kids? What if they laugh at me? What if I freeze and forget my words? At the end of class, I stayed behind and walked up to Mr. Clark. "Hi, Mr. Clark?" I said quietly. "Yes, Sophia," he replied with a warm smile. "I was thinking about the speaking club. I've been practicing a little at home. I'm just still nervous." He looked at me kindly. "It's okay to be nervous, Sophia. That's exactly why we have the club. To help students like you build confidence. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try." I nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll come." That Thursday afternoon, I walked into the club meeting with my backpack feeling heavier than usual. Not because of books, but because of nerves. There were about 10 students sitting in a circle in the library. Some I knew by name, others I had only seen in the hallways. They were chatting and smiling. A few looked nervous like me. Mr. Clark clapped. His hands. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. This club is a place where we learn, grow, and support each other. There's no judgment, only encouragement. I found a seat near the end of the circle. My hands were a little sweaty. I smiled politely at the girl next to me who gave me a small wave. Mr. Clark continued. Each week we'll practice short speeches or talks. Today let's keep it easy. Just stand up, say your name, and tell us one thing you enjoy. One by one, students stood and shared. I'm Ethan. I like video games. I'm Mia. I enjoy painting. I'm Liam. I love soccer. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly. My knees felt a little shaky. I looked around the circle. Everyone was watching, but not in a scary way. They were waiting for me, kindly. I'm Sophia, I said. My voice was soft but steady. And I like to write stories. And sometimes I read them to my family. There was a pause, then claps. Real, kind claps. I sat back down, my heart full. I had done it. It was small, but it mattered. At the end of the meeting, Mr. Clark handed out small notebooks. These are your speaking journals, he said. Use them to write your thoughts, your speeches, or anything you want to share in the club. That night at home, I opened the notebook and wrote on the first page, Today, I spoke in front of new people. I was scared, but I did it anyway. The next meeting, Mr. Clark gave us a new challenge. This week, he said, I want you to prepare a 1-minute talk. You can choose any topic, something simple. It can be your favorite, food, a movie, a memory, or a pet. At first, I didn't know what to pick, but then I thought about the day my dog Max came into our family. I smiled and started writing. When I was 9, we brought home Max. He was a tiny brown puppy with floppy ears and big eyes. I remember the way he licked my hand and wagged his tail. I was scared of dogs before that day. But Max changed everything. I practiced at home again, in front of the mirror, then in front of my family. My mom said, Sophia, you're becoming a storyteller. Thursday came. I was nervous again, but it felt different. It felt like excitement this time. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up holding my notebook. I want to tell you about the day I met Max, my dog. I spoke clearly. My hands still trembled a bit, but I didn't stop. I saw nods and smiles around the room. When I finished, the claps felt louder than before. After the meeting, a girl named Ava came up to me. Your story was really sweet, she said. I liked it. I felt my cheeks get warm. Thank you. The weeks passed quickly. Each time I spoke, it got a little easier. I shared about my favorite teacher, my first time riding a bike, even a story about how I accidentally wore 2 different socks to school one day. We laughed together, and I started to feel like I belonged. I wasn't just the quiet girl anymore. I was someone with stories to tell. One day, Mr. Clark surprised us with an idea. Next month, he said, we'll have our first school-wide speaking event. We'll invite parents, teachers, and other students to come and listen. Each of you will get to share a short speech on stage. I froze. A real stage? People watching? My voice in a microphone? The fear rushed back like a wave, but then I looked around the room. I saw Ava, who had become my friend. I saw Ethan, who once stumbled over his words but now spoke with confidence. I saw my own notebook filled with stories, ideas, and courage. I'll try, I whispered to myself. I'll try. That night, I started working on a new speech called The Girl Who Found Her Voice. It started like this. I used to be the girl who never raised her hand, the girl who sat in the back of the class and hoped no one would notice her. But something changed. I started speaking, first in my room, then to my family, then in a club, and now I'm here. I wrote every word from the heart. I practiced again and again. My family listened. My brother clapped. Even Max wagged his tail when I finished. The day of the event came fast. My name was listed third on the program. I stood backstage with my speech in hand, knees shaking, but mind steady. Mr. Clark gave me a thumbs up. Ava squeezed my hand. Then I heard it. Next, please welcome Sophia. The room clapped as I walked up the steps to the stage. The lights were bright. The microphone stood in front of me like a giant. I took a deep breath. Hi, I said. My name is Sophia, and I want to tell you how I found my voice. I told my story. I told them about being shy. I told them about the mirror, the living room, the birthday speech, and the club. And when I finished, the whole room clapped. Not just politely, but warmly, loudly, proudly. I stepped off that stage, not as the quiet girl, but as the girl who could speak, the girl who did speak, and who would never be afraid again. After I spoke at our club's small event with the parents and students who came to support us, I felt something inside me unlock. It was like I had stepped into a brighter version of myself, one that had always been hiding behind fear and silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the sound of the clapping, the smiles of the teachers, and the way my voice echoed across the room without shaking. I replayed it again and again, and for the first time in my life, I didn't want to rewind and change anything. I felt proud. The next day at school, something happened that surprised me. At lunch, our principal, Mrs. Donovan, walked over to our table where Ava and I were sitting. She was holding a folder and had that friendly but serious look on her face that teachers and principals often have. "Hi, Sophia," she said, smiling warmly. I looked up. "Hi, Mrs. Donovan." "I was at the speaking club event last night," she said. "You were wonderful. Your story really touched the audience." My heart started to race a little. "Thank you," I said, my voice quiet. "We're planning a school-wide assembly next month," she continued. "It's for Student Leadership Day. We want one student speaker from each grade level to give a short talk to the whole school. I'd like you to represent your grade." The words hung in the air. To the whole school? That meant students from every grade. Teachers, staff, probably hundreds of people in the auditorium. I felt like time had frozen. "Oh," I said slowly. "That's a lot of people." She smiled gently. "It is, but I think you're ready. Think about it. Let me know by the end of the week." After she walked away, Ava turned to me, her eyes wide. "Sophia, this is huge. You have to do it." I shook my head, half laughing, half terrified. "I don't. No, it's everyone. What if I mess up in front of the whole school?" Ava leaned in. "You didn't mess up last time. You told your story. People listened. You're not the same Sophia you were a year ago." That night, I sat in my room with my notebook. I opened to a blank page and wrote just 4 words. "Can I do this?" I stared at them for a long time. Then I turned the page and wrote, "I've come this far. I can go farther." The next morning, I found Mrs. Donovan before class. "I'll do it," I said. My voice shook a little, but I meant it. Her eyes lit up. "That's wonderful, Sophia. I'll be in touch with details soon." For the next 3 weeks, everything changed. I had a new goal, a bigger one than ever before. I had given speeches to my mirror, to my family, to a small group of classmates, even to parents in the library. But this was the whole school, my biggest challenge yet. I knew one thing for sure. I needed to tell a story that mattered, not just to me, but to everyone listening. I wanted to give a speech that helped others the way speaking had helped me. I called it Finding My Voice, From Silence to Stage. Each day after school, I worked on it. I would sit at the desk in my room and think back to all the little moments that made me who I was. I wrote about hiding in the back of the classroom, afraid to raise my hand. I wrote about watching other kids give speeches while I sat quietly wishing I could be brave like them. I wrote about the first time I practiced in my room, how my words came out like tiny whispers. I wrote about Grandma's birthday. I wrote about joining the speaking club, and I wrote about the moment when Mrs. Donovan asked me to speak at the assembly, and how scared I felt. Again. But I also wrote about how fear didn't mean I had to stop. It meant I had to try harder. My family helped me every step of the way. My mom listened to me practice every evening. My dad helped me with the timing. My little brother clapped every time I finished, even if I stumbled in the middle. And Max, my dog, just sat there wagging his tail as if he knew I was preparing for something big. 1 week before the assembly, I had my final practice with Mr. Clark in the library. He sat in the front row of an empty room and listened carefully. When I finished, he stood up and clapped. "Sophia," he said, "this is one of the best student speeches I've heard in all my years of teaching. You've come so far." I smiled, but the butterflies were still flying in my stomach. "I'm still nervous," I admitted. "That's okay," he said. "Nervous means you care. It means you want to do well. Just remember, your job isn't to be perfect. Your job is to be real. Speak from your heart, and people will listen." Finally, the day came. The school gym was turned into an auditorium. Rows and rows of chairs were set up. A big banner hung above the stage. Student Leadership Day. Speak, inspire, lead. I stood backstage, holding my paper. My palms were sweaty. My heart was beating fast. I could hear hundreds of voices on the other side of the curtain, students chatting, teachers getting everyone seated. I peeked through the side and saw a sea of faces. My classmates, kids from other grades, teachers, even the janitor who always said hello to me in the hallway. And in the front row, I saw my mom, dad, and little brother. Max wasn't allowed in school, but I knew he was cheering for me from home. The lights dimmed. The principal walked up to the microphone. "Today we'll hear from students who've shown courage, leadership, and heart. Let's welcome our first speaker from the 7th grade, Sophia." The room clapped. I stepped out into the light. The stage felt bigger than I remembered. I walked to the microphone and took a deep breath. Then I began. "Hi, my name is Sophia. A year ago, if you had asked me to speak in front of the school, I would have said no. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I was too afraid to say it." I paused. In elementary school, I was the quiet girl, the one who never raised her hand, the one who sat at the back of the room, hoping no one would call on her. I had thoughts, ideas, stories, but I kept them inside. I looked up and saw people watching, really watching. Some were leaning forward, but something changed. One day, I stood in front of a mirror and practiced saying hello. Then I practiced a short story. Then I spoke in front of my family. And then I joined a speaking club where I found friends who listened and helped me grow. I took a breath. I learned that fear doesn't go away on its own. You have to walk through it, step by step, word by word. I saw Ava in the crowd, smiling and giving me a thumbs up. And now, I'm here, speaking to all of you. Not because I'm the loudest, not because I'm the best, but because I finally believe that my voice matters. I looked around the room, trying to make eye contact with different students. Maybe some of you feel the same way I used to feel. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, I could never do that. But I'm here to tell you, you can. I paused again. Start small. Practice in your room, talk to your pet, speak in front of your family, join a club. You don't have to be perfect. Just begin. Because the world needs your voice. It needs your stories. I took a final deep breath. I'm not just the quiet girl anymore. I'm the girl who speaks. And I'm proud of how far I've come. The whole room stood up. They clapped and clapped. It felt like a dream. I walked off the stage with tears in my eyes, not because I was sad, but because I knew I had just lived one of the most important moments of my life. Mrs. Donovan hugged me. Mr. Clark gave me a high five. A group of sixth graders ran up to me and said, "You were so brave. I want to speak next year." And that's when I realized I didn't just give a speech. I lit a spark.